Okay, we're going to quickly look at radio buttons. Now, I don't know about you, on mine, what happens is when I click on my buttons and forms, which can be found under Window and Interactive and Buttons and Forms, if I actually were to drop down here, click on Save Buttons and Forms, number one, it doesn't show up. Now, actually, it crashes my InDesign. So, what I want to do is just make a quick custom button myself. So, I'm just going to click on my circle tool. I'm going to click and drag, and there it is. That's all you really need to do. What you should maybe play around with if you want to. Let's add a color to it. Doesn't really matter. Now, the idea behind the radio button is that it's a black circle inside of this circle. So what I should do is I should at least bring down that color to anything less than, 80, 90, 100% black, just so you'll be able to see the black of that button. But it's going to show up differently anyways, realistically. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I'm going to duplicate this out. I'm just holding down Option, Shift, and dragging it out. I'm going to show you a couple different options here. Number one, if I click on these, I'm going to click on my buttons and forms. I'm going to go to my type and make sure it's a radio button. There it is. Great, radio buttons. And automatically, that's what they're going to look like. Kind of. This is going to kind of be their click state. When I just click on this, and now the one thing we need to notice as well is that they're all named the same. They're all named radio button 3, radio button 3, radio button 3, radio button 3. Now, what else is here? We have some events and actions we're not going to touch because it's just a simple radio button. Now, we do have some options to change our appearances. We could add a rollover state and we could have a click on state, but not going to really look at that. You could obviously play around with that. I want it to be printable. Yes, of course. So when if this sheet were to get printed, do I want these to show up? Yep. Required, maybe there's a situation where it needs to be required or read only or anything like that. Just leave that alone. However, so those are named the same. Now I'm going to do the same thing here, but this time I'm going to make them radio buttons. But I'm going to name them all separately, something different. So I'm not going to name them the same, and let's see what that does. Okay, so they're all named separately. These ones are all named the same. Let's just take a peek and see what this is all about. File, export. Now, if I want to make an interactive PDF, a PDF that is a fillable form, I have to make sure that I click on Adobe PDF Interactive, not our common Adobe PDF Print. This isn't for print, although you could print it, but if you did, those interactive elements would not show up. They would not be active. So I'm going to make sure that Adobe PDF Interactive is selected. Maybe I'll just call this radio. And I'll just say, okay, save it. Now, a slightly different one shows up here, but yes, I want all the pages to show up, sure, and I want all my elements to show up as well. So I'm just going to export, and there it is. Now, what you expected to see is not what you see, but that's okay. This is the default. I believe you could change it in Acrobat Pro DC to show up a little bit differently, but that's only going to change on your computer, not if you're sending this to somebody else's computer. This is more than likely how it's going to show up, so that's okay. There's no rollover state, but it does show that there's a choice, obviously. I can click, and that's what I'm going to see. I was like, okay, I can click on one, click on the other, and the other one's deactivate. Now these ones are all named the same. These ones are not. So if I click on one, I can click on another and another and another. Now the thing I'd love to see is this to deactivate, but that's not the nature of radio buttons. So what we can do instead is we can use a different type of button. So I'm going to make a circle again here. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to change this to a checkbox. So now a checkbox actually has the option to change and activate and deactivate. So potentially if you're doing something like that, you can make it work this way where something needs to be active and unactive. So right now they're all named differently, even though I copied them out. This is checkbox 7, 8, 9. Great. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, let me duplicate that this way, and I'm going to name them all the same just to show you what that does. You probably never use this option, but it is something that is available to you. So let's just say C1, C1, and there I go. Great, that's it, done. So let's take a look and see what we can do here. File, export again, and I'll just go back to radio, and I make sure it's interactive and save, replace, export. There we go. So that's how these ones show up. Great. So if this was the one that were all named the same. So if you click on one, they all click. They all activate. That makes sense. This one, it's separate. They could activate separately or individually. And these were the same radio buttons we had from before. Okay? And that's it.